Welcome to Everything Explained. Today we're exploring where democracy came from and how it took shape across centuries. The word democracy comes from two Greek roots: demos, the people, and kratos, power. But democracy didn't appear as a single invention. It grew, adapted, and sometimes failed, in many places at different times. Let's start with ancient Greece. Around 500 BCE, Athens created a system where eligible citizens could vote on laws and policies in public assemblies. A rotating council of 500 ran daily tasks, and decisions were made in the open, with citizens speaking their minds. The big caveat: only free male citizens could participate. Women, slaves, and non-citizens were left out. It's democracy for a slice of society. Think of a town meeting where only homeowners get to vote. Still, it showed a powerful idea. People can govern themselves directly, rather than hand control to a single ruler. Within Athens, speech mattered almost as much as the vote. They prized isagoria, the equal right to speak in the assembly, and isonomia, equality before the law. Debates were lively, and major decisions came from the crowd, not a throne. In parallel, other places around the world were trying forms of power sharing too. In Iceland, the Althing began around 930, a kind of open-air parliament where farmers and traders gathered to write laws and settle disputes. It wasn't modern democracy, but it gave ordinary people a voice in lawmaking against the king. Across North America, many indigenous nations used councils and assemblies that balanced power among leaders and elders, with an emphasis on consensus and shared responsibility. The Iroquois Great Law of Peace created a federation of nations and a council system that encouraged negotiation and collective decision-making. These practices show that the impulse toward political participation isn't only a Greek or European story, it runs in many corners of the world. Move forward a bit to Rome and some other ancient experiments. Rome's republic wasn't pure democracy either, but it did give citizens a voice through elected representatives, consuls, and popular assemblies. It was more about checks and balances than rule by the people in the Athens sense. Yet the Rome idea, that laws should be made with some form of consent and accountability, left a trail sailors could follow later. As time moved on, power often remained in the hands of monarchs and elites. Across medieval Europe, new constraints on kings began to spread. The Magna Carta of 1215 didn't give people democracy the way we think of it, but it did insist that the king's power had limits, and that certain rights could not be ignored. Over centuries, parliaments grew in importance, especially in England. The idea that taxes should be approved by a representative body helped seed a different relationship between ruler and ruled. Consent as a precondition for authority. Then came the Age of Ideas. In the 17th and 18th centuries, philosophers argued that governments should rest on the consent of the governed and protect natural rights. Thomas Hobbes warned that without a strong social contract, people would descend into chaos. John Locke argued for life, liberty, and property, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau spoke of the general will, the idea that legitimate laws should reflect what the people as a whole want. Montesquieu pushed for dividing power among different branches to guard against tyranny. These ideas didn't just stay in books, they moved into new political experiments. Direct democracy isn't easy to scale to the whole planet, so a common path was the rise of representative systems. Over time, as populations grew, direct democracy became harder to manage. Many places turned to representatives to handle day-to-day governance while still inviting ordinary people to participate through elections, assemblies, or referendums. That tension between direct participation and representative governance is a thread that runs through democracy to this day. The American Revolution and the creation of the United States offered a practical test. The Constitution built checks and balances, and the Bill of Rights protected essential freedoms. The idea was to limit government power and give ordinary people a say through elections and representation. It wasn't universal democracy at first. Voting was limited by property, race, and gender. But it planted the concept that legitimate government has to derive from the people and be answerable to them. France, too, pushed hard for universal rights, even if the path was turbulent. The era inspired other movements and raised expectations that politics should reflect the will and rights of many, not just the few. Across the 19th and into the 20th century, many countries expanded the franchise. Britain extended voting rights through reform acts. Women won the vote in many places only after long campaigns. New nations built democratic institutions as they emerged from empires. The result is a patchwork. Lots of different models and timelines, sharing the core idea: power should be rooted in the people and regulated by laws, not by might alone. So what does this mean for democracy today? It's not a finished product. Democracy is a living process. It needs fair elections, equal protection under the law, transparency, and the chance for ordinary people to participate, whether by voting, speaking out, serving in office, or holding leaders to account. It can survive bad times, but only if people care enough to show up and push for better rules. In the end, the origins of democracy are several strands braided together: a Greek experiment with direct citizen voting, a Roman search for balanced power, medieval limits on rulers, Enlightenment ideas about rights and consent, and centuries of political struggle that widened the circle of who counts as the people. Democracy isn't a single invention. It's a long, ongoing project, always needing renewal and vigilance. So let's remember, democracy starts with us, our questions, our votes, and our willingness to keep the conversation going.